To the war in the Middle East and the Biden administration's response to it. Joining us now to discuss it all is Hudson Institute Senior Fellow Michael Doran. Michael, thank you so much for coming on the U.S. Report. Now, there's an awful lot of strange goings-on between Israel and the U.S. lately, and I've seen reports that the defense minister of Israel has lined up with the Biden administration on Rafah and Gaza, and there's even talk going around that the Biden administration is really hoping for a change of government in Israel. Michael, break down what's going on here.
So, James, great to be here. Thanks for having me. I think the simplest thing to say is that the Biden administration wants to shut down the war. It's afraid that if the war continues, if Israel defeats Hamas, it may then turn its guns northward against Hezbollah. That will be a disaster from the Biden administration's point of view because it will destroy their Iran policy, Hezbollah being the favorite proxy of Iran. And they just want to shut the whole war down because all the other things that are going on with the Houthis and Hezbollah and the militias in Iraq, it'll all get quiet for the election. And the easiest way to shut it down is just to put pressure on the Israelis. That's I think the essential point here. But then there's all the other things as well. They don't like the government of Benjamin Netanyahu. They want to bring that government down, and they want to substitute Netanyahu with maybe Gantz or someone else. So they've also put together this. They're putting pressure on the Israeli government to come up with a day after program on Gaza, where the Palestinian Authority will supposedly take over Gaza. Never going to happen. But by demanding that the Israeli government sign up for that vision of the day after, they create a crisis in the coalition between Netanyahu and his coalition members to the right, who are adamantly opposed to the Palestinian Authority having a role in Gaza.
So if I get this right here, essentially the U.S., the White House, the Biden administration is kind of interfering in Israeli domestic politics to help itself out with its own domestic politics in the U.S. But at the end of the day, this leaves Hamas in power, and it looks to me like essentially, when you break it down, Joe Biden is defending Hamas or stopping them from being defeated.
Well, I think that's right. I don't think the goal is to have Hamas win. The goal is to stop the war. It's very obvious that that's what they want to do. Twice over the last month, they put enormous pressure on the Israelis to make concessions to Hamas to get a ceasefire, which they hope they could extend all the way to November. But what they failed to recognize is that when they openly put pressure on Israel, including by withholding weapons for Israel publicly, it just gives Hamas the sense that it can hold out longer and demand more, and that it doesn't have to make any concessions to Israel. So they don't actually get the result they wanted. They put all the pressure on Israel, and then Hamas didn't come toward them, and so the war continues.
Yeah, and I mean, it just seems like they're very muddled here, though, because on that question of weapons, it does look like they are now going to push forward with $1 billion package of weapons aid for Israel, despite saying that they weren't going to give them. So how muddled is all of this? Because it's very hard to pick this apart from a distance. What has changed?
I don't think they're actually moving forward with those weapons. I think that's some of the clever messaging. They had to make some notifications to Congress, which gave the impression that it was moving forward. But they've been withholding weapons back since December. It just hasn't been well reported. So I think we should just look at this. The easiest way is just think about it in terms of domestic politics. Biden now has a message for pro-Israel Democrats and anti-Israel Democrats. To anti-Israel Democrats, he's saying, I'm putting pressure on Netanyahu. I'm working against him. I'm trying to create a pathway to a Palestinian state. You can see me doing that in real time. To pro-Israel Democrats, he's saying, I've given Israel an enormous amount of support since October 7th. Yes, there's friction between us, but look at all that I've done. And if we can just get the Middle East off the headlines, that's a message that he wants to take to November.
Well, I hope a lot of people in Washington are watching the U.S. report, because if they do, they're going to know that each side is being essentially lied to here. And I love this response here from Karine Jean-Pierre when she was asked about whether or not they're using politics or they're playing domestic politics here with the way that they're dealing with Israel. Have a look at this.
The president's comments, about his decision to pause a shipment to Israel came in the light of campus protests. I mean, were those comments made in light of, kind of appeasing or reaching out to younger voters, or how people were feeling in the country at that point?
I would say that we have been very loud and clear about our concerns about a major military operations in Rafah for weeks, for months. This is not about politics for this president. This is about the right thing to do.
So it's not about politics. I mean, surely we can't believe this, can we?
No, of course we can't believe it. I don't want to say it's all about politics, but this is an election year, and the left wing of the Democratic Party, the progressive base, doesn't like Israel. But there's another issue here too as well, James, and that's the vision of regional order that the administration has. We've talked about this before. They believe in reaching an agreement with Iran. They don't want this conflict to go north to Hezbollah, for that to heat up, because that will ruin their relations with Iran. Now, you and I think their relations with Iran are in really bad shape, but they don't. They think they have some kind of constructive dialogue going on, and they want to hold on to that.